welcome into the RinkWise Podcast by New England Hockey Journal. I'm Evan Maranofsky, joined as always by the incredible Patrick Donnelly. Pat, what's up?
Feeling incredible after a Chiefs Super Bowl loss and more importantly a BU Beanpot win. Everything's coming up for me. Everything's coming up.
Everything's coming up, Pat Donnelly.
I got a couple Beanpot photos behind me. We got Dylan Peterson that I took 2 years ago when they won.
I thought you already put those up.
No. That would have been fast. I wish I had my own.
Wow.
Printer. No, that's Dylan Peterson when they won 3 years ago now. Ryan Green celebrating last year. And then the cover jinx might be over after Cole Iserman came up clutch last night.
Oh, I have to say, your photos were incredible. So Pat shot the Beanpot, and I will say I have a video on my phone. I meant to send it to you, but I have like no storage on my phone because it's a couple of years old. So I'm like, do I really need to send this? But I will send it. I was walking down to the press conferences with Connor Ryan and Josh Cummins, and we detoured and like watched the Beanpot get handed out and everybody celebrate. And I see you by the boards taking photos, and everybody was taking videos of the celebration. I was videoing you. I was videoing you. My phone has a terrible camera, so I was trying to get a good shot, and I couldn't really.
Could have had me mic'd up.
I should have. I should just you like grunting as you're taking photos. Like, no, that's a great one. Like I think that'd be a compelling segment for the TV show for sure. But yeah, big win for BU. I mean, I said it to you before. I thought BC was going to win. I think most people did, but your boys pulled it out.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was. If the only way I thought BU had a chance was it was a goalie duel, 2-1 with a crap your pants third period, and Yegorov steals it. But it was the opposite, and it was not good at the start of the game. It was like first period felt like it was a power play for the whole thing. Like BC was dominating. BU just got on track, and what I said to you was it's hard. The only thing I had like to hang a hat on anything was like it's hard to beat a team 3 times in 2 weeks in college hockey. That's how it goes.
It is. I think that's in anything like college hockey, NHL, prep, MIAA. Like I think that kind of goes across the board, but it was a great game. Both teams over 40 shots. I was impressed with that. I mean, I think 4-1 doesn't really do it justice. I thought that was a great game. And I mean, again, Yegorov played outstanding. My vote for Beanpot MVP was Cole Hudson. I thought Hudson was dominant in that championship game. And one little developing take I have, and we don't really do much college, but I think other people agree with me on this. I think James Higgins needs another year in college. I think Higgins needs a second year. I'm not saying he's bad. He's been great this year. But his numbers aren't off the charts. Didn't notice him a heck of a ton in either Beanpot game. So to me, I think another year at BC would be really beneficial for him, where you can be the star, and most guys are back. Perreault and Leonard will be gone, but you'll have Stiga. You'll have guys, you'll have more Latorno. you got guys there, and I think that it'd be beneficial for him to stay another year.
Yeah, I would agree. Just from in my just down at ice level, realizing I haven't noticed him much at all in either game.
I know.
Speaking of Teddy Stiga, I mean, aside from the gold medal goal, just someone whose stock has risen a ton in the last month. He was nails, I think, both weeks of the Beanpot.
Sorry, I was drinking something. He's been fascinating.
Should have filled a little more.
I was like, should I drink this yet? No, I think he's going. No, he's been unbelievable. And he's the guy you want on your team. Like, he's a guy you want. If you're building a team, you want that guy in your top 6 or your middle 6, and kills penalties, power play, creative, gritty, like everything. You just want that. You want him on your team. And I think you've seen that, where it's like you put him with some, good, half decent players, man. And you never don't notice him. You notice him every shift. Yep. So he's been great. And that started his 18 year at the program, putting up like 70 something or 80 points. And, he's been nails this year. I think he's like 3rd or 4th on their team in points. And he's been hot. Like ever since that gold medal goal, he's been unbelievable. So that was a big confidence boost for him. So the local kids did well. Shane LaChance had a big first game, captain of the BU from Andover. Cole Iserman scores in the Beanpot final. Newburyport. Stiga was great. Sudbury. Ryan Leonard was amazing first game, and thought he was fine in the championship. Amherst kid. So good tournament for the locals, and we'll keep it local because we're New England Hockey Journal, obviously. And we're going to talk because we're doing this February 11th. This will come out, I believe, February 12th on Wednesday, and we're getting down. We're getting down in the season. We're getting to the end here, kind of the final push for playoffs in both NEPSAC and MIAA. And we're going to go over both, where things stand for the Elite Eight, where things stand in the MIAA power rankings, and we'll start with boys prep. On the Elite Eight, the playoff seedings as of today, and the projected final ones. I don't think there's any doubt Dexter's number one. Dexter had another huge week. Pomfret was 6-2. Andover was 7-1. They have been dominant. They are not number one, though, in goals for in New England. Do you know who's number one in the region for goals?
Ooh. I don't know. I can't even come up with a good guess. I haven't paid attention to that stat. I'm gonna say Brunswick.
It's not a bad guess. That's not a bad guess, but it isn't. It's Rivers. Rivers is the
I should have
number.
guessed that.
But you wouldn't think. I don't know.
Well, I remember I read it in your rankings the other day too.
I was gonna say, did you read my rankings?
I did.
But
did you really edit those?
Did you? What did you do? Did you just like scroll through it? I don't know. I guess I would have expected an older team, or I'd expect like KUA or Holderness, because they beat up on the Lakes region teams. So it's like, those kids rack up tons of points every year, and I would think it'd be one of those. But Rivers. And then it makes sense because Carter Myers on a crazy pace. We'll get to that in a bit. Finn Sears, Sam Pandolfo, Justin Graff have all been scoring at a great pace. But Dexter's clearly won. Deerfield and St. Mark's have solidified themselves, at least as of now, as 2 and 3. Brunswick is 4 in both the Elite Eight if it started today and the Elite Eight for the end of the season. KUA beat Holderness. So that's sort of their test, like with the Lakes region, because the Lakes region teams, except for Tilton. Tilton's been outstanding this year. It really comes down to the 2 KUA Holderness games of, where they're going to fit in the Elite Eight, how that all works. And KUA won the first one. Second one's coming up. So KUA is safely, at least as of now, in the number 5 spot. They do have some big games coming up. They have Cushing. They have Holderness again. They have Andover on Wednesday. Then they have the Lakes Region Tournament, which can kind of always be a little weird in that like a surprise team can emerge. But then after that 6, 7, 8 is where it really changes. As of now, if the Elite Eight started today, it would be Nobles at 6, Salisbury 7, Rivers 8. Now, if the projected Elite Eight at the end of the year is different, Belmont Hill is at 6, Rivers is 7, and Nobles is 8. So, as of now, I would say it's a race between those 4 teams, Salisbury, Bell Hill, Rivers, and Nobles, for that final spot. And I think the big game I have highlighted is Friday, February 21st, Nobles, Bell Hill. Like, that's going to be a big game. 2 teams who are going to be vying for the Elite Eight. It's funny, Nobles and Bell Hill, it's always kind of annoying because their first game of the season is against each other. So it's like, I want to see those 2 at the end play twice. But I think it's interesting kind of how Rivers has moved in. Like, I considered Rivers a small school lock a couple weeks ago, and they've moved into the Elite Eight contention.
I was just thinking of this because I remembered it from your forecast last week, and I pulled it up. By the JSPR is how we listed them. You had Belmont Hill 4th, and now they're on the bubble, might not make it. And Rivers, you said these X, Y, and Z losses give us a good idea they'll be in the small school tournament. It's crazy how quickly things have changed.
They have, and they beat Belmont Hill over the weekend. That's what did it. And they've taken care of business. I think they've won 7 straight. And then they have some big games coming up because they've got They got St. George's on Wednesday, which is always a tough opponent, and they have St. Mark's on the 19th. So they have they have those two teams, tough teams coming up in their schedule. So to me, like my whole thing with Rivers was just, I felt they were a small school team throughout. Just, I mean, obviously the high end talent, but I didn't know. I didn't know if they lacked the depth to match up everywhere against other Elite Eight teams. And they've proven me wrong because they've been outstanding over the last 7 games. They're scoring at a crazy pace. That 09 line is just ridiculous right now. So they're getting hot at the right time. And I remember talking to Dan Panciocco, one of the Rivers assistants, or I think, they have 2 assistants, but he's one of the Rivers assistants. He coaches the D. And I remember him saying to me last year as they left the ice after losing the small school, he was like, next year's our year. And I as I looked at their roster coming into the year, I was like, oh, maybe. And then they had some tough losses the first 2 months of the season. It's okay, well, there's nothing wrong with being a good small school team. Like there isn't anything wrong with that. That's a great thing.
Still playing for a trophy.
They're still playing for a trophy. Still playing for a trophy.
All that matters.
And that's all that matters. Exactly. And that, it's a big deal. We're not minimizing small or large school stuff. We're not. We just Elite Eight of the top 8 teams. That's what we discuss. But I just didn't think they had the depth throughout the lineup to compete with other Elite Eight teams. And so far they have. And it'll be big for them to take care of St. George's and St. Mark's. That St. Mark's game is going to be huge. If St. Mark's loses, do they fall to like 5 or 6 in the Elite Eight? Because I think it's crazy. It's incredible. St. Mark's is likely going to host potentially 2 Elite Eight games. Like that's huge. So it'll be interesting to see. And then you have Salisbury, who right now is on the inside, but end of season they have outside. So they just swept Upper Canada College. They beat Trinity Pawling. They have Taft on Wednesday. They have Westminster on Monday, who beat Avon. And then they have Brunswick and Avon Wednesday, Saturday, February 19th and February 22nd. That's a tough slate. And I think the USHR algorithm has Salisbury losing 1 or 2 of those and then falling out and being the top seed in the large school. I don't know. I still think this roster is good. I do. I like Davis and Headley at the top. Yeah, they haven't got the offense that maybe they've needed behind them, but they're still pretty stout on D. Steven Luciano's been good in net. Jordan Rittenberg's been good in net. Andrew Will is Andrew Will. I'm never counting Salisbury out, not just because I ranked them number 1 at the beginning of the year, but I also I think they're a good roster and they're historically a good team. So then who gets knocked out? I don't know. Does it come down to that Bell Hill Nobles game? Maybe.
I think it might. I think it does.
That might be if Salisbury takes care of their business and Rivers takes care of theirs. But see, even the thing with Rivers is like I would assume by the algorithm for the end of the season, the algorithm has Rivers losing to St. Mark's because St. Mark's is a higher seeded team and they beat them the first time. So I would assume that the Rivers being 7th in the Elite Eight at the end of the season takes into account that loss. Now, I don't know this for sure, but Rivers has 5 losses right now, and USHR projects they're going to have 1 more. I would assume that's St. Mark's. So even if they lost to St. Mark's, they could still be in if everything goes chalk.
I think the scenario that takes Rivers out is a loss to St. George's.
Bingo.
And a loss to St. Mark's. If you lose to St. George's and you beat St. Mark's, then it doesn't matter because you'll weigh the. I'd imagine it would weigh the win over St. Mark's more than the loss to St. George's.
Probably. And then also,
at least to me, that's how it would make sense.
I would do the same thing. You also have to take care of business against Roxbury Latin, Middlesex, Brooks.
Yes.
Like you've got to also win those games, which they can be overlooked. Like those can be trap games. But then I don't know who falls out of that. Like Salisbury has the toughest road by far because you've got to play Avon and Brunswick in the next couple weeks in a 2-game span. That's good. So if they can win those, then that's different. And I assume the algorithm has them losing at least to Brunswick because Brunswick ranks higher. Avon is, I don't want to say out because I think that's overstated. I don't think that's true. But They're out in both algorithms. They're number 2 in the large school, both today and projected at the end of the season. They have coming up, they have Deerfield on Saturday, which will be a big game. They have Salisbury the next Saturday. And then they have Pomfret, who's been a really good team this year. So I don't even know if Avon can get back into it, given that they've lost 3 of the last 4, Berkshire, Westminster, and Loomis. So we might be in a scenario where Salisbury and Avon are the top 2 seeds in the large school. That'd be a wild tournament. Oh my God.
It would be a great tournament.
Be a
I
great
remember
tournament.
last year, some of the teams on the games on the girls' side, and especially in the large school tournament, were honestly a little more exciting than some of the quarter and semis in the Elite Eight.
That's the thing. We focus on the Elite Eight because it's the Elite Eight, but the large and small school games have some incredible matchups. So I'm interested to see how boys prep shakes out, and if any of those we kind of glossed over the top 5 teams. I wonder if any of those teams fall out or hit a loss that they shouldn't. As I always say, as Tim Whitehead once said to me, teenagers are unpredictable. So
Yep.
does one of those top
This is
teams
the time of year
hit
trap
the skids?
games.
That's exactly it. And if you're like, okay, let's play this game. If you're Deerfield, so you're Deerfield, you're sitting pretty in number 2. They play Loomis Wednesday. Wouldn't Loomis love to? They were basically Avon's spoiler. They'd probably love to be Deerfield's spoiler. Taft would love to be a spoiler. Williston, Exeter, Kent, Westminster. I mean, like, it's not guaranteed you win those games. Just because you're favored doesn't mean you're going to win them. So I don't want to make it seem like 1 through 5 is set. It's not. But I think the real interesting part is who are those final 3 teams? Because those are the ones that are changing the most. And even if, when we did this last week, the teams were different in 6, 7, and 8. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with boys prep going forward. One other little boys prep tidbit, Brian Day retiring at the end of the season. He will be 24 years, a great career there. Still will be teaching at the school. He teaches economics in the history department, which that's not just a job they hand to oh, you're coaching the team, let's get you a job in the school. You got to know your stuff to teach economics.
Teach some social studies, will you?
Yeah. Hey, I love history. We're history guys on this show. But I agree with you. It's a great career. It'll be very interesting to see who takes over that job. That's a big job.
Yeah, they'll have a hard time filling that.
Oh yeah, very hard
I'm being
time.
sarcastic. I'm being sarcastic.
Of course. No one's gonna want to go play in that rink. Like if I'm trying to get hired, like let's say they were really recruiting one of us, which I don't know why they would. But if they were, I'd be like, I'm only taking that job if you get a new rink.
Maybe the economics background, Brian Day can come up with some sort of plan. Never know.
I like that.
No.
I think he could. That is great. we're gonna save money here. We're gonna do this. I think it'd be great. He'd be great at that. But a great career for him.
Yes.
I was going through the number of just incredible alums that he's coached or former players that he's coached, and the lists. The Hayes brothers, Billy Sweezy was one I'd kind of forgotten about. Coach Jaden Struble for a bit. There's a lot more. Bill Arnold, Dave Arnold's son. There's more, and there's a ton more, and I'm blanking on them at the moment. But he's coached some phenomenal players, and again, it's a sought-after job. Nobles is in it every year. They're a big athletic program. I'm very interested to see who the names are that pop up for a couple, but we'll save that for the spring.
We'll table it for now
when we really need it. Girls, Pat, how's girls prep looking right now?
I mean, I don't want to just anoint the top 7 seeds. But just the I know here comes the jinx rearing its ugly head. I mean, but just the way the seedings have just kind of moved over the last several probably week or two now. It's just been a revolving door at 8, while 1 through 7 have kind of just jockeyed, and I kind of see that holding. I mean, Thayer has a tough finishing stretch. They have Groton and BB&N. Groton and BB&N both traded the 8 seed last week, just depending on the given day you looked. So those could be huge games down the stretch. But I mean, other than that, for 8, I'm looking at, you have BB&N right there. They're projected to hold on to the 8th seed. Deerfield's number 1 in the large school. They're projected to finish there. And Groton's number 1 in the small school. They're also projected to finish there. But the thing, we just said with the boys' side, teenagers are unpredictable. Groton has a chance, Groton has Nobles tomorrow. They have Thayer, the second to last game of the season. St. George's is a good small school seed. If they run the table, pick up 2 or 3 wins in those games, especially, you get a win over Nobles or Thayer, 2 teams ahead of you, could be big for them. BB&N, the thing that bodes well for them is the wins they picked up last week, all against teams currently in a tournament. They beat Governors, I believe is in the small school field or large school. Small school. The Governor's currently fourth in the small school. Milton currently has a large school seed. Exeter currently has a large school seed. So BB&N 3 wins in a row against tournament teams. That bodes very well. Down the stretch, they have, you get Cushing, you get Nobles and Cushing and St. George's all this
Oh
week.
God.
Yeah.
Oh,
So kind of a make or break for them, especially if you can come away with 2 or 3 wins or, a win ahead of a team you're against the team ahead of you. You also got Tabor next week, and Tabor's been spoiler for a lot of teams this year. Lawrence Academy has kind of been around that large school bracket, and you have Thayer and Williston to close out the season.
oh my
Like
God. Their
so,
schedule's insane.
the last 3 weeks go St. George's, Nobles, Cushing, Tabor, Lawrence, Middlesex, Thayer, and Williston.
So I'm assuming that the algorithm does not expect them to win all those games, but I'm guessing that
Let's
if they can go like 500 through that, they can stay in the Elite Eight race, given that
The algorithm has them losing 2 of those games, which
that's
is
interesting. So they would, I'm
interesting.
assuming, well, see,
If I had to venture a guess,
Cushing's ahead of them. Cushing's ahead of them as well. So is Nobles and Williston.
if I had to venture a guess, I think the algorithm thinks they're losing to Nobles and Williston.
I would
Because,
agree, but I'm surprised they don't have them losing to Cushing too, because Cushing's ahead of
well,
them.
I mean, the thing with Cushing that we talked about is just how Cushing's fared against Elite Eight teams, and
True.
that caliber. So Cushing's losses: Williston twice. They lost to Andover 2 weeks ago. They just lost to Nobles over the weekend. They tied New Hampton, and they actually just beat BB&N at the start of the month. So I don't, but like you also don't want to just assume that that's how it's gonna play out. Like we've been talking about the whole time, because St. George's is giving teams some fits this year. Tabor, obviously, we've talked about a ton. Even though they're 500, the schedule that they've played has been insane.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really interesting race for that eighth seed. And you look at Deerfield, who is also red hot. They're on the 10 or 11 game unbeaten streak. They've won 6 in a row. They just beat Andover. They beat St. Paul's, who's in the large school tournament. I mean, the rest of the schedule, they got, Westminster's a game they should win. You got Berkshire as a large school team, Cushing in the Elite Eight. Kent's been in the mix for the large school. And you got Wilson and Loomis after Hotchkiss to close out your season. So the algorithm currently has Deerfield losing 2 of those games as well.
I
So
was gonna say they have Deerfield, that top seed in the Auden tournament, which
yeah. So
Deerfield's got a good record, man. Like that's
and
a hard team to keep out.
yeah, and so I'm assuming you got to imagine too. It's those 2 projected losses are Williston and Loomis at the end of the season, and it thinks they're going to beat Cushing.
So
That's
they must be down on Cushing, but then they have Cushing
They
in
have
the
Cushing
Elite
currently 6th right now, and they have them finishing as
fifth.
5th. So
Wow.
it has Cushing right now is 19-4-1, and it has Cushing finishing with 2 more losses.
That's interesting.
So that would be presumably BB&N and Deerfield.
Yeah.
Cushing's remaining
Wow.
schedule, aside from those games, you got Lawrence, Loomis Chaffee, BB&N, Deerfield, Dexter. Like there could be more than 2 losses in there. There could
That's
also
the thing.
be like
I'm very curious.
Or if Cushing runs the table in those games, are we talking about them like a top 3 seed?
We gotta have someone who knows the algorithm well and just like grill them.
Yeah.
Like, how does this loss doesn't make any sense?
Yeah, I
I
don't know if
I
they
don't
can
see
become,
that.
Yeah, I don't know if they can, if Cushing say they run the table in those games, I don't know if they can still become a top 3 seed. Just, Wilson's undefeated, Dexter's undefeated, Loomis has 1 loss, but can they jump Nobles and get further into that top 5? It's hard
Nobles
to
was
jump.
much lower at
Yeah.
like a week ago, right?
The quiet part we haven't talked about Nobles is, like, even though the record isn't on par with what it was last year, undefeated, and now, big whoop, 3 losses, really falling off there, guys. Um, they've given up 2 goals, more than 2 goals, 2 or more, 4 times this season. They've given up, so their 4-2 win over Rivers last night this is Tuesday on Monday night. The first time since the loss to Dexter on January 8th that they gave up 2 goals, at least.
Oh my God. Yeah. I'm looking at this
They've
right now. And they only gave up 2 to Williston.
They've won 12 straight. And so the thing that probably would keep them ahead of Cushing is the head-to-head win.
There you go. There you go.
And now Andover could also is another one to watch too, where, we've been talking about them with how talented they are and, kind of a, I guess, leaner schedule as far as the number of games go up to this point. But, they just got tough weekend last week. We talked about, you beat Cushing, then you tie BB&N and lose to Deerfield. But then they jump back this week with wins against Tabor and New Hampton, both quality wins. So that kind of that has them back in the top 5. And you look at it the rest of the way. I mean, you got AP, Milton, and then you get into the gauntlet where it's Williston, Nobles, Worcester Academy's in there, and then Loomis and Exeter.
Wow.
So, I don't.
What I like is that these teams beef up the end of their year schedule. Yes. I think that's cool. That makes it so much more fun. Yeah.
And so the way I'm it's tough for me to say it looks like the top 7 seeds are set, but where a lot of them are playing head to head, I don't know if it's enough to take anybody out. Whereas we've seen these last few weeks where it's been 1 through 7 it's been 4 through 7, maybe even 3 through 7, kind of jumping around and playing leapfrog, where 8's been the revolving door.
Are you serious about playing your sport in college? Do you need a flexible education that allows you to maintain your practice and competition schedules while also preparing you to succeed at the next level? You should check out the University of Nebraska High School. UNHS is accredited and offers more than 100 online courses, including NCAA-approved courses to protect your academic eligibility. Students could earn a UNHS diploma or take a single course for transfer credit. Courses are college prep, self-paced, and available 24/7, 365. Enroll anytime and take up to a year to complete a course. Visit highschool.nebraska.edu today.
So I say, go top shelf, upper 90s, right under the crossbar. Any questions?
Professor, the NCAA lacrosse championships are coming to Boston. Are we ready?
You prepared to get loud, face paint up, bring boom boom to Beantown? Oh, you're ready. The NCAA D1, D2, and D3 men's and D1 women's lacrosse championships, May 23rd through the 26th in Boston. Buy your seats today at ncaa.com/tickets.
See, this is the thing with all these high-end teams playing each other in the final couple weeks, and obviously the algorithm takes kind of what it thinks is going to happen.
The voodoo, yes.
But if one of those teams loses all those games or wins all those games, it's going to change from what the algorithm has, and that team will rise or could fall out of the Elite Eight. I mean, is there any team that you see Deerfield seems interesting as potentially getting in? Groton,
I think Deerfield and Groton are the ones to watch. I think Exeter is now out of it after losing head-to-head to BB&N last week, and they've had a rough stretch since the new year.
Yeah.
Or since the end of January. They've won 1 of their last 6.
Okay, so that's my thing. That's not an Elite Eight team. I'm sorry.
They lost to Nobles. They lost to Rivers, which is a small school team. They lost to Loomis. They lost to Dexter. They lost to BB&N. So a tough schedule, and they haven't, come away with, the bounces haven't gone their way with it. So I think it comes down to Deerfield, BB&N, and Groton for that last spot. And, I think we talked about Groton already where, outside of Nobles, St. George isn't there. They have a chance to kind of build some momentum here and build a case and kind of and BB&N, I think, is a similar boat with their schedule where Deerfield could just get beaten up on by these teams. And maybe it comes down to BB&N and Groton, and if they can come away with a win in any of their high-end matchups.
Yeah. It's the girls' side's getting interesting as well.
Yeah.
Just given that, kind of the end. It seems like in both boys and girls prep, those top seeds feel somewhat solidified. barring something unforeseen. But then it's, as every year is, it's those final couple spots that could change the most. My guess is, like I mentioned, the top 5 in boys. I'm guessing the top 5 is going to be different next week, and I'm assuming that with girls, we mentioned like the top 7. Top 7 is going to potentially be different next week.
Yeah, I think the only ones you can really lock in are Wilson at 1 and Dexter at 2, barring anything crazy. I think Loomis, unless Nobles, has something crazy in their high-end matchups or vice versa with Loomis. I think Loomis is probably kind of safe for the 3 seed, although they've kind of traded it back and forth a couple times a few weeks. But, Loomis has won, I don't know, 13 straight, something like that.
That's
They're unbeaten in 18 straight. They lost to Nobles 1-0. They got goalied against Nobles in the season opener. They had I think Annika Jonas had 34 saves in a 1-0 win. And since they've been on fire, 18 straight unbeaten.
I was going to say, so that team needs to be in the Elite Eight, obviously, and it'll be probably a high seed. And I think with boys, even Dexter to me is clearly 1, but Deerfield, St. Mark's, Brunswick, KUA has to play Cushing. I wouldn't shock me if one of those teams, I'm not saying falls out of it, but fell out of being a top seed. And I don't want to focus too much on potential matchups, because I think they're going to change. I don't want to sit here and be oh, in the boys side, Dexter would play Nobles first round and St. Mark's would play Belmont Hill. And those are great matchups, but my guess is that's not going to be how it ends. So it's an interesting look at prep. We'll continue to do that. We'll have rankings and all that fun stuff. Let's switch over to the MIAA, because that season is finishing as well. Both of these seasons are kind of together and how they're going to finish. I think the championships for MIA are a week after the prep championships, which feels really early. Last year, I remember the prep championships ended and I was able to go without any prep stuff to do. I was able to go to I think an Elite Eight, the quarterfinals, able to do all those big games. And I don't know if that's going to be the case this year, which is a shame. Thank God those games were at Loring last year for the boys. And I think the girls were there too, right?
Yes. At least D1 was. I don't know if D2 was.
Yeah, but boys Division 1 was at Loring, and that was the same weekend. I always tell people that was the same weekend my car needed to get to go into the shop, so I just lived at home with my parents for a weekend, and it was like I was back in high school driving my mom's car to Loring. I was like, oh my God, this is it's 8 years ago. Let's start with boys. Boys power rankings were just updated as of February 11th, so Tuesday. Pope is number 1 in the region. There's no doubt about that. That's the number 1 seed. I don't care what happens in the Cardinal Classic. They're number 1. I would be stunned if they were not. Their rating is 0.4 higher than St. John's Prep, which is big for power rankings. They've dominated. I've talked a lot about them this year. They're my favorite going into this tournament. I think at the very least they make the Garden. But again, it's the tournament. Weird things happen. Then you get into this next grouping. So St. John's Prep is 2, but not by much. CM just beat them. So CM at a game at West Point beat St. John's Prep. I think it was 3-0 and moved into the 3 spot. So CM's an interesting team. They're young. They've got Jackson Nelson in it, who's an 8th grader. They have some interesting forwards who are young. But can they make a deep run? Maybe. Wouldn't shock me. They've struggled in recent years to get past that Elite 8 round. But I do think that that they potentially could. BC High at 4, I find really interesting. Because BC High has struggled all year at scoring goals.
Yeah, the record does not jump out.
No, the record doesn't jump out. They've struggled mightily to score goals. So they just beat St. Mary's Lynn 4-0, which is a legit win. That's a great win for them. Funniest part, though, they tied Central Catholic 0-0, or not Central Catholic, Catholic Memorial 0-0 the game before. And they've had multiple games where they've been shut out and they've struggled to score, but they're good in net. Drew Karlovitz is really good, sophomore goalie, and they play a structured physical game. And I put Reading in this category. They don't really have a go-to scorer. And the tournament every year is not a high-scoring affair. These are not 5-3 games or 6-4 or 5-4. These are mostly 2-1 games, OT, like team that makes the least mistakes wins. And it just, BC High and Reading, I kind of put in that category of like, I could see them winning a 1-0 game, then a 2-1 game, and kind of making a little bit of a run. Now, the thing is I've always said this about the Catholic Conference schools. They all play each other. They all beat up on each other. They're all really good. They're all battle tested. But here's the thing. And we saw this last year when St. John's Prep played Xaverian in the semifinal. When you have two private schools going at each other, typically the players are more talented. You have more talented players typically than a public. Not always, but typically. And they play a certain way. It's hard to get Xaverian, who's a high-end team, to all say, hey, you know what? Let's pack it in. Let St. John's Prep outshoot us. Let's just capitalize on mistakes and play sort of a selfless game to try to beat them. Because they have skill guys too. They have skilled guys who play fast. The problem is, like last year, St. John's Prep was more skilled and faster, so it was never close. But when Winchester goes and plays St. John's Prep, they have no problem getting outshot 41-15 or whatever. Like, there's no problem with that. As long as they chip pucks out and capitalize on some mistakes and finish some chances, like, you're right there. And they should have went to overtime with them. So that's my thing with the Catholic Conference teams is like, if you're not the best one, it's hard to come out of that unless you're fully willing to play a game that is boring and that is not flashy. And historically, that's not been a common theme. If that changes, great. But that's why it's hard to bet for the Catholic Conference teams. It's hard to bet against St. John's Prep. Even though they lost quite a bit this year. So, and then you have the public. So, like, Belmont just won the Ed Burns, beat Arlington. That's a huge win for Belmont. Belmont, I think, has been one of the real breakout teams in the state. I don't even think we ranked them in the top 10 to begin the year, if memory serves. And, like, did you see them? No, I don't think you saw them the first week. You saw
No, you did.
Different teams.
I saw Hingham, Reading, Braintree, and
Winchester.
Winchester.
That was right. It was Winchester. So Winchester's hit the skids of late. Braintree's a low seed. So
Winchester's still 11th, though.
They are. Because the top 10 in boys has not really... Like, the top 10 has changed in the top 10.
Yeah.
But the top 10 teams have been pretty steady. It's kind of a mix of Middlesex, League, public schools, Catholic Conference teams, and then, like, Pope and Hingham. But when it comes to Belmont, this has been one of my developing takes. I've said this to people at games the last couple weeks, and some people are like, what the hell? But I believe it. Belmont has this incredible top line. Adam Bauer, Leo Packard, and Liam Gilderson. High-end, powerful, two-way. They play half the game. They're phenomenal. I think I said this last week. After watching Kimball Union last year, there aren't many teams that can counter Belmont's top line. Now, if they get shut down, then that's probably it. And they also have a phenomenal goalie in Ethan Bauer. They have a phenomenal goalie in Ethan Bauer, who 08, 6'3", tremendous goalie. But I just don't. How is it? What team is shutting them down? I'm not saying they're winning the whole thing. I'm not saying that. But it's going to be a hard...
whichever team sees them in the quarterfinals of Elite Eight.
Right. Whatever team sees them in round one is going to be like, just shut them off immediately. Then you're going to clip this, and I'm going to look like an idiot.
Okay, so it's Burlington.
That's right. Burlington's going to take them out. I just don't see Belmont going out early. I see Belmont being in that final grouping of teams. Not saying they're going to make it to the Garden, but I wouldn't be shocked if they did. I wouldn't want to play as an 8 seed. Or as a 6 seed, I wouldn't want to play them. I wouldn't. Like, I've watched them the last 3 weeks. They're a good team. And by the way, like, we talk about their top line, their other lines might not score as much, but they play responsible hockey. So, like, good goaltending, which is a big thing for teams, and a high-end top line is a huge thing for teams. And they have both. So when I'm checking off my boxes for teams that can go deep, they have it. They have it. So I don't know. I think they're an interesting group. And then, Hingham as a public, they're deep. They've hit the skids of late, but it kind of might be at the right time just because they're getting the bad losses out of the way now. And then, outside of the top 10, I don't know about Archie's. If St. John's can get back Daniel Minyalkin, who they've been missing, like maybe they go on a run, maybe not. So I don't know. Like I was talking about this with Paul McNamara on the TV show. I was talking about this with Cam Carey the other day at the Ed Burns and Tom Muller, and like who's going to be the Winchester this year? Who's the public that for Division One that goes deep? And Belmont's not, because Belmont's at top 10. But maybe I've mentioned this on here before, but like Braintree wouldn't shock me. And you saw them.
They got the goalie.
They have the goalie.
Amir Cullinane's been fantastic this year, and he was amazing in that first round game at Ed Burns.
Every year there's a public school goalie who goes on a crazy run. It was Emmerich last year, and I just wonder if he's the one this year. It could easily be someone else
too.
Could be multiple. Yeah, he's big. And I look down even lower.
Braintree's a big team too. Sorry to cut you off, but like you think about like, playoff style hockey. Like Braintree's a big team.
Yeah. So again, and they, Fasano I think just hit win 300.
Yeah.
So they're a team that I would not want to play who's a lower seeded team. Now I haven't watched all these teams. Like I have not. I have not watched Waltham or Westford Academy or Shrewsbury. I haven't watched a lot of the lower seeded teams because we typically try to prioritize when the top teams play the other top teams. But like Marshfield at 18, I know it's been sort of a down year for them and they've struggled mightily against good teams, which is kind of why I wouldn't really pin them as a team that goes deep. But like, it's still Marshfield. Like, do you really want to play Marshfield in the first round or second round? So it's interesting. I don't know. And then, I think this is a year, my developing take is I think Pope gets to the Garden, and I think one of like the end of the top 10, one of those top 10, like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 teams get in. Like St. Mary's has the goalie, Matthew Smith Jr., who's been phenomenal. Like, does he go on a run? Zavarian is Zavarian. Like, they've been up and down. Arlington, I'm not so sure of. Arlington has struggled of late. Depth-wise, I wonder with them going deep. I think they bowed out relatively early last year. And Reading plays structured, but they're not a high-scoring team. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I am fascinated to see what the final ends up being. I don't want to have it spoiled. I don't want to just go right to the end. I want to see the whole process through, but it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. But I think it's going to be Pope and then one of those like 5 through 10 teams in the Garden. But I'll save some more takes for next week when we do this exact same thing. Girls-wise, let's start in Division 1. Hingham seems to clearly be one, but Notre Dame Hingham is not too far behind.
Yeah.
But it kind of is at the same time. Like, it's almost a full point.
Yeah, nothing's really changed. It's Hingham, NDA, MC. That's been how it's been for, feels like a month now. Probably only been 2 weeks, but it feels like a month. Then Andover, Archie's, Methuen. It's also kind of how it's been for a while now. I think the real like kind of jockeying that you're looking at is 7 through 12, 7 through 10. Even like Winthrop was hovering around low teens or kind of around 12 or whatever, and now they're all the way down to 18. So they're, I think, one to watch as a sleeper. But the thing with NDA, and we talked about it last week, is their opponent rating of 1.5 rounding up or rounding down, which is almost double Hingham's. Hingham's 0.8. And your schedule is your schedule, and Hingham's done very well in their schedule. But you look at a team like NDA and MC, and they've lost to Hingham head to head, but they've taken care of other top end teams in their schedules, and they're you talk about battle tested, and both teams have the goalies. Both teams kind of have especially MC. Every time I see them, it always seems like a dramatic ending. Ava Baker, clutch gene, whatever. But like. Yeah, you just wonder about, the like I said, the battle tested factor with those top 3 teams in D1. But then the same thing with Hingham is both goalies have seen plenty of action this year. Both goalies have played well. It's not as much as Caroline Doherty grabs the headlines. It's not just her. Their second line is just as good. Their top pair on defense, I don't know if CeCe Flynn and Shea Richardson are on the same pair consistently, but their top two defenders can do it all in all three zones. Good puck movers. So like they've got the depth. It's just a matter of if you can get a team that shuts down Caroline Doherty and the second line can't break through either, then Hingham's in trouble. But so far, no one's been able to do that. So it's interesting to see North Andover at 4, especially ahead of Methuen, where there's Tewksbury, Methuen, or they're undefeated, 15-0-2. North Andover's 12-2-4, and there's a head-to-head loss there. Methuen Tewksbury beat them a couple weeks ago. So that's an interesting one to kind of watch, I guess, the rest of the way. And Archie's too, where we talked about them kind of in the middle of the season, where they start, I think, winless in their first 4 or whatever it was, or 1 win in their first 5, whatever the stretch was, and then they've gone on this heater since January. They're a 5th seed, where they've played a schedule like it's sort of on par with MC and NDA, and taking care of it over this last few weeks. So I think they're the one to watch. As far as we've talked about lower seeds already, but Billerica Chelmsford is a 9 seed, Peabody is a 10th seed, Andover is an 11. The thing with Peabody too is their strength of schedule. It's the lowest of anybody in the top 10. Andover's played a pretty decent schedule, especially for a team outside of the top 10. So yeah, I like, it's kind of the same thing we talked about in girls prep, where I think 1 through 3 is pretty set, and it's tough to see anyone cracking that. And so all eyes turn to just the jockeying 4 through 10, 4 through 11.
That's where the fun discussion happens, because the number 1 team and the number 2 and 3 teams often are just, good. They're too good. And then you get in Division 2. Westwood clearly 1, and Duxbury's clearly 2. So another common theme here. But 3 on seems to be where things get interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I know Duxbury's 2, but I just have a hard time imagining they like losing to anybody in this field, because the thing about the D2 field especially has been strength of schedule, and you look at Westwood's opponent rating, it's in the negatives, and Duxbury's played 0.99 opponent rating, and that's on par with a lot of teams in the top 10 of D1.
I would say that's the highest of any team.
It's not even close.
Not
I think the next closest is Longmeadow has the highest in D1 at 1.1335, and they have 2 wins on the season.
Highest in Division 2, you mean?
Yeah. That's sorry. Which is an insane strength of schedule for them.
That is crazy.
Yeah, one of their wins is over Peabody too. So that's a top 10 team in D1 that they beat. So I guess if you want something to hang your head on, is Longmeadow potential Cinderella, the 2-win Cinderella? I mean,
that's a great take. I love that take. I love that take.
I was thinking about it so much, right? Like writing my my MIAA forecast last week. Because a lot of my sleepers I did, kind of like you, teens and teams kind of outside the top 10. But I just couldn't get out of the back of my head Longmeadow's the schedule that they've played, and I was like, I really just want to go out on a limb here and be like, all right, a true sleeper. But
that is the definition of a sleeper. Like boys Division 1, Central Catholic 3-15. They have a strength of schedule of 2.636. Like Shrewsbury's 2.02. Like it's those would truly be sleepers.
Yeah. So if you get a Longmeadow as a 24th seed going up against, I don't know, call it Auburn or Medfield, one of those higher teams who have an opponent rating in the negatives, against the Longmeadow, who's faced much better competition on balance of the season. Who's to say in a 1-game winner take all that a team like that doesn't just upend you?
That's the thing. That's the thing.
The beauty of the MIAA tournament.
It is.
Other than that, kind of like I said, Duxbury, the strength of schedule is what is what I'm staking my flag in with them. And Westwood, it's the highest scoring state in all of girls hockey, or highest scoring team in all of girls hockey in the state. 16-0-1. negative opponent rating. Algonquin is the next highest of any team in the top 3 or in the top 5 until you get to Falmouth at 7. I think Falmouth is one to watch outside of the top 5. We've talked about them plenty, with their high scoring forwards. I'm not sure if they're all in the same line. I haven't seen Falmouth this season, but it's kind of like the Belmont thing you talked about, where can anybody shut those 3 players down? Because they're all averaging over a goal per game and over 2 points a game. So
that's the thing. Like, I don't, in the NHL, it's like you have one good line. That's not good. Like, you're going to shut down and you're done. But at the MIAA level, how many teams have a defensive line? Because, like, again, if you're putting that line potentially from Falmouth or the one I mentioned on the boys' side with Belmont up against another team's top line, they are likely better. So you would need defensive people who, guys who or girls who are just defensive and are, great in their own zone. And that's hard to find in a second and third line in the MIAA. And I don't mean any disrespect by that. It's just the way things work.
Which is what's so impressive about Hingham is that, on your top line, you have a Caroline Doherty and an Artie Garrity, or, however their top 6 shakes out in a given night. And then on the next line, you have Hannah Lash and Callie Crean, who've been awesome this year in their own right and were phenomenal as freshmen too. So that's like, the beauty of having a top 6 like that. The only other thing for girls MIA I would watch out for, and especially in D2, are kind of these younger teams. You have a Woburn that has 11 underclassmen, and their goalie Cadence Pierce has been awesome this season. I think, and then you have King Philip, who has 23 underclassmen, 0 seniors. The entire team is basically, freshmen and 8th graders.
That's incredible. It's like Rivers.
Like, like Annabelle Curran, a freshman, Stephanie LeBlanc, an 8th grader, Ella Morgan, a sophomore, and you have a junior goalie in Kiki Lynch, so that's kind of key experience there, and she's been very good this season. And we talk about these young teams that just kind of, you have nothing to lose. You go play free and loose, and you upend a higher seed. And the same kind of goes for, Auburn, who isn't, I don't think they have quite the same amount of, this many underclassmen, but you have a, Chloe LeMay has been awesome in that she's a freshman. And then you have the kind of Olivia Vian as senior, and then freshman Gianna Smolis. So like, it's a good mix of youth and experience, both in net and with the skaters. So I think I don't know. You can't count out the youth.
You can't, and especially getting that experience for later on in future runs as well. Yeah, the MIAA is tough to tell because it's one tournament for each division. I was talking about this with Brendan Lane over at he's with My Hockey Live. He does stuff with everything college hockey. I was talking to him at the Beanpot, and we both want the Super 8 back, like, completely. But we both kind of agreed, like, the one tournament is kind of cool because, like, crazy stuff happens, whereas, like, 2-seeded St. John's Prep can lose in the second round to Burlington or something, and it's whereas in the Elite 8,
no disrespect to Burlington twice now on this podcast.
No, I don't mean it. They have actually done really well this year. I know what you mean. They're 9-6-1. They're sort of ranked in the middle of the pack. I'm just kind of, as I said, using them as an example. All my love to the Burlington Ice Palace. 2
strays that Burlington caught.
Yeah, we're anti-Burlington podcast. That's what we are. We hate Burlington. I'm kidding, of course. Don't actually take that seriously, people. But it's going to be interesting. It'll be a fun run. So we'll do this again next week. We'll just roll through these teams again, and I'll probably say the exact same thing on Belmont. I'll be like, top line, I can see them going deep. But things could change.
For over 20 years, Eric Nate's Euro Hockey has been helping hockey players of all ages develop their individual skills and improve on all aspects of their game. Through structured drills and innovative training equipment, Eric Nate's Euro Hockey's intense on-ice instruction challenges each student to be the best at their ability. Find a hockey clinic or summer camp that is right for you today at nateshockey.com. That's NATES hockey.com. Eric Nate's Euro Hockey, train to be the best.
Do you want to become a better hockey player this summer with Paul Vincent Hockey? Since 1972, Paul Vincent, currently the head skills instructor of the Florida Panthers, has been developing NHL and college hockey players. Paul Vincent stands by his saying, there's always room for player development. Players such as Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taves, Keith Yandel, Matt Grislick, Patrick Sharp, Adam Oates, and many more have trained with Coach Vincent and his staff and have outstanding results. Join Paul Vincent this summer at one of his 4 Massachusetts locations, Canton, Saugus, Middleton, and Falmouth on Cape Cod. To reserve your spot today, go to pvhockey.com or call 978-807-4070. That's pvhockey.com or call 978-807-4070. Paul Vincent is ready to get back to work this summer. Are you?
Do you want to skate fast? For 50 years, Laura Stam instructors have taught youth players to pros how to skate correctly, powerfully, and fast. Players who attend Laura Stam power skating programs learn how to skate fast by learning how to execute every maneuver in hockey. They become powerful, stable, efficient, and explosively fast skaters. If you can't wait for a clinic, join our subscription skills video service, and we'll show you the skills taught at our clinics in an easy-to-use video format with training plans to guide your training. Register or subscribe now at laurastam.com. That's LAURASTAMM.com. You can learn to skate fast.
Before we go, as always, our great producer David Yaz has overtime.
Overtime.
Welcome back to Overtime. I have 3 questions for our panelists. Pretty simple edition of Overtime. We have some multiple choice questions, but there are no right answers. Evan, you get to start. Among these, which NHL tradition is the best? Throwing hats for a hat trick, of course, the classic. The playoff beard superstition, or singing along with the national anthem? Hats for a hat trick, playoff beards, or national anthem? What's the best tradition?
If this was a test, I didn't know the answer, I would cross off playoff beards first. I think that comes off the list. I would go with hat trick. I'd go with hat trick. I think that's cool. And the player picks up a hat. A lot of teams will display the other hats in like a certain area, or they'll have fans. I think they can come. Some teams you can go back and get them. But I think it's a cool tradition.
Have you ever thrown a hat?
I have not. I have never.
Well,
never.
Come on, get your hat off.
I used to dream about being at a game with my dad and having a hat trick and just grabbing the hat off his head and throwing it and having him just be like, what are you doing? And I always wanted that to happen, but it never did.
Pat, hat trick, playoff beards, national anthem.
I'd love to know why he crossed off playoff beards.
Every team does them, so they cancel each other out.
Unless you're, the New York Islanders or the New Jersey Devils under Lou Lamoriello, and you're very boring and vanilla.
They do not. You're right.
It is unique to hockey, with the exception of the 2013 Boston Red Sox, who did the beards for some reason. But anyway. Pat,
I'd probably go with playoff beards with the hat tricks by the close second. I don't think everywhere sings the anthem, so I guess it kind of depends where you are. Like Chicago does. But I don't know, the playoff beards is cool because, like, you see, like, the guys winning the cup, they're all like scraggly and, rough and tumble at the end, and they just went through a war for 2 months, and they look like it. I think it's pretty cool. It's pretty badass.
Yes,
it is.
Especially if you have a good beard. Like
Patrick wins the point. No, I'm just kidding. There's no. But there's a new tradition which has started in the NBA, and that is in Canadian stadiums, they're booing the American national anthem. And you can just go ahead and guess why. New tradition. I support it. I
thought you were gonna have us do like a multiple choice question.
No. I was just giving you a footnote. We're gonna stay away from that. Second question: what's the best way to experience outdoor hockey among these 3? Pat, you get this first. Best way to experience outdoor hockey: frozen pond with friends, pick up frozen pond game, street hockey, or roller hockey. Pond hockey, street hockey, roller hockey.
Pond hockey. It's like you go on like a Saturday morning, or you spend all day out there and you're with your buddies, and you got these tournaments like 2-on-2, 3-on-3, and it's some like crazy intense, even though you're just out there messing around. Somebody could get hurt, but it's so much fun.
Does someone always bring a net, or do you have to improvise?
We usually improvise. We had milk crates the last time, which was actually a pretty good idea. But usually it's just like somebody's boots. Or if we get lucky and like somebody like nearby is like, oh, we have these little nets. You want to play with us? And like, sure.
Very good, Evan. Frozen pond, street hockey, roller hockey.
The correct answer is frozen pond, but I will argue for street hockey because I do think that's not far off. It's a close second. Growing up, the friend who had the cul-de-sac, that was the thing. And there was a kid growing up, Ben Stefanini. He's actually playing semi-professionally somewhere down south. And he lived in a cul-de-sac. And his parent, for some reason, he had a bazillion sticks. He had crazy amounts of goalie pads. He had 2 nets. He had a million street hockey balls. And we played street hockey in that cul-de-sac through college. Like it was legit. We had leagues and stuff. And when they would have a block party, and it was like parents' first kids. That was so fun. So, and they always had like Gatorades and snacks. So, if it's the right street hockey setting, street hockey is unbelievable.
My brothers and I used to play indoor tape ball hockey, and when we didn't have sticks, we like wore knee pads and just played on our knees. You just smack the thing. It can be full contact too. A lot of fun. Good answers, both. Final question. We'll start with you, Evan. What is, among these 3 uniforms, what's the one that you would most like to wear? The most attractive, the most compelling, whatever. You got the Kings, black, silver, and white. You got the Canadiens, classic red, white, and blue. And you got the Kraken, which I believe navy blue, white, and what they're calling shadow blue.
I mean, I'm going to give the old cross out to the Seattle uniform. I have no need for that. And then I grew up not liking the Canadiens. They do have an objectively very, very good uniform. Those Kings homes are awesome. I'm going with the Kings. I think those jerseys rock. It's like harken back to the Gretzky days.
Good choice, Pat. Your thoughts?
See, I think the Kings aways are so much better than those homes.
White jerseys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can. They're so clean.
Yeah.
I had a buddy who like impulse bought a Anze Kopitar away version of those because he loves Kopitar for some reason, and went to a Bruins game versus the Kings, and was cheering for the Bruins while wearing his Kopitar jersey.
It's very strange.
Like
can't do that.
We were all with him, just ragging on him the whole time. I'm gonna go with the Canadiens. Kind of like Evan. Like grew up hating them. Probably not a great answer around Boston, but they're so good looking. Those jerseys are awesome.
Clean.
It's hard to argue. It's kind of like I begrudgingly admit the New York Yankees uniforms are great. They're classic.
What?
No.
You don't think so?
Oh,
The
really?
No.
Oh.
I mean, believe me, I hate them with the hatred of 1,000 suns, but I respect the uniform. But everybody has a bad.
Just earned his pinstripes.
I find them so trashy. And maybe that's because I find Yankee fans trashy. But
I just think
Yankee
of Gabagool.
Well, it's
sweaty guy.
Well, that's what you associate with them. But there's a reason why they haven't changed them in 100 years.
No, it works. I agree.
It's like the Celtics and the Red Wings. And
do you guys have a bad uniform purchase jersey? I'd have to go non-hockey with mine, but my brother bought a Patriots Maurice Hurst uniform, the real authentic one, probably $75 at the time, something like that. And he got waived like 2 weeks after my brother bought the uniform. You guys, you got one?
I have one like that. So I was a huge fan of Josh Gordon, the wide receiver.
Sure.
He, off the field issues, whatever, but he was electric on the field. He was so much fun to watch. And I was so pumped when the Patriots signed him. And he was playing really well for a while there with the Patriots. Like, I'm kind of bummed it didn't work out.
Yep.
And so I got, there was a little while there, me and my buddies were like collecting these jerseys and, probably not getting legit ones for top dollar.
I remember I did the same thing.
So I ordered a Josh Gordon Patriots jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Like the old, before they switched to these new ones, the old away white ones, which were so crisp.
Yeah.
And it came the day he was cut, and not only that, the nameplate on the back is like slightly crooked.
What'd you order from Fanatics?
I mean, these days it could be a legit jersey from Fanatics.
That's the thing. Yeah.
But it's like it's noticeable. It's like tough to fix. It was devastating.
The Patriots actually, Josh Gordon had some off the field incident that led to his release from the Patriots, if I'm not mistaken. When Aaron Hernandez departed the NFL for obvious reasons, the Patriots actually had a swap program.
I went there with my dad.
Oh, did you? Yeah,
I got
that was a classy move. Yeah.
That was a good thing by them.
Yeah.
Good move by them. I was never a big jersey guy. The only one that aged poorly was I did the same thing, Pat. Right before college, I ordered like 2 jerseys that weren't really real. But one was a Gordon Hayward Celtics one, and he broke his leg like a month after I got it, and then he was never the same. So that was that.
Using the word break is kind of kind. It doesn't quite describe how gruesome that injury was. Yeah, I remember.
Kevin Ware minus the protruding.
They just got him in was it the first game or the second game?
First I remember where I was when that happened.
It was the first quarter.
It's like your leg is not supposed to bend that way. It's really bad.
Immediate.
Oh. Well, you both did.
End on a high note.
Yeah, that's a great place to end. Gruesome injuries. You both did very well in overtime. Back to you, Evan, to wrap things up.
Well, thank you, Yaz. And yeah, that's RinkWise this week. We're going to have a lot more coming for you. Prep, MIAA. And that's Patrick Donnelly. I'm Evan Marinofsky. We will see you at the rinks.